Hosea chapter 3. We have seen that Hosea has certain passages, especially at the end of chapter 1, and then into chapter 2, and now into chapter 3, with regards to prophetic words for the future. Now, that's a very important thing to recognize, mainly because if you're not aware that some of these are prophetic passages that refers to a future time, then we would get confused over some of the things that's said. So far, what we have seen is that God has instructed Hosea to do something really different, really difficult, to marry Gomer, a woman who has committed adultery, a harlot, and then have 3 children. And the names of the children became symbolic of what God is going to do with the children of Israel. Now, I've also tried to clarify that this entire book of Hosea is dealing with the northern kingdom. The children of Israel refers to the house of Israel, which is the northern kingdom. The southern kingdom is known as the house of Judah. And so they are also called children of Judah. So one of the difficulties that many people have when they read the book of Hosea is when they confuse children of Israel as the whole of Israel, and it's not. And so now when we enter into chapter 3, you should also realize that it is to Israel, the children of Israel, or the northern part, or the northern kingdom, that God has said, you are not my people and I am not your God. But of course, God has said that at the end days, God will call them back, and then he would join both Israel and Judah together to have one king. Now, we saw in chapter 2 some of the prophetic passages, and now coming into chapter 3, we are seeing another unusual request by God to Hosea. So when we start in chapter 3, we'll spend a little time trying to explain some of the words so that we are a bit clearer. Chapter 3, verse 1. And Jehovah God said to me, and that's Hosea, right? Go again once more. And this time, instead of marrying a harlot, now you go and love a woman who is loved by a lover. Now, a couple of things we need to pay attention to is, number one, this word here, love a woman, right? Go and give yourself to a woman. I guess in short, we can call it marry a woman. So this appears to be a second wife, right? But it is an unusual woman because he is one loved by a lover. Now, this word, I don't like this word. And I'll tell you, this would be better used as a neighbor, right? A neighbor, a friend, right? A woman who is loved by a friend as well and is committing adultery, which means that these two is committing adultery, but go and love this woman. And this will create the picture and the image of what God is doing. And what is this picture here? The picture is the love of God for the children of Israel. So this woman who is committing adultery with a neighbor, Hosea is asked to go and love this woman. And this gives us a picture of how God is loving the children of Israel, the northern kingdom. And what is so unusual about the children of Israel is that who look to other gods and love the raisin cakes of the pagans. Now, one thing you notice in the King James and the New King James, all these words that is in italics, Okay, these are italics. It means that it is not in the Hebrew. They were added in by the translators to make the English flow. All right. A couple of words that we need to be aware of. We are aware that God loves the children of Israel. And this would be the northern kingdom. I just put it down. Huh? Northern kingdom. So that we differentiate from the southern kingdom. What did the children of the northern kingdom do? And it says here, they look to other gods. I also don't like this word, so I would propose this other thing. They would turn away to other gods. They look to other gods, they turn away, they actually turn. Actually, the whole idea is about turning. Although look away is okay, but turn away gives you a bigger impression that they are walking away instead of to Jehovah. They are walking away to other gods, and that would be what I think would be a better explanation, right? They turn to other Elohim, and turning away is always used in the Bible of people who, instead of looking at God, they look at other things and they start to walk away. That's the whole concept of turn away. And you know the opposite of turn away would be shuv, to turn back, and that would be repent. And so that is how the ideas of turning away from God and he is angry, and turning back to God is where God is pleased. And so these children of Israel are the ones who turn away to other gods and seem to love the raisin cakes. Now these are cakes that is compressed. They are pressed together and baked, and they are made from grapes. And so these are generally the cakes that is used to offer to idols. And so the picture here that we have from here to here is that the children of Israel look towards other gods, and the way that they look towards other gods or turn away to other gods is by making all these cakes. And they love to make these cakes. I don't think they're eating the cakes. They are using it as offering to other gods. And so understand this, worshiping other gods is not in the heart. In the eyes of God, when you turn away, you're literally walking away from the right path. And so this is not just turning away from the right path, they are turning away towards idols. And what about other idols? They will make the cakes and offer to the idols. And so we are very clear then that this woman that Hosea is asked to love and do it one more time is about adultery. Committing adultery, although in a physical sense, a man and a married woman does that, you would find that God would be actually loving a woman in adultery in the form of Hosea and this woman. And this woman is having a lover, a neighbor that they are committing adultery with. And that neighbor is reflected as other gods. And so this whole picture is this: physical human commitment of committing adultery actually is a representation of Israel, or here the children of Israel, the northern kingdom, going after other gods. Now, why is God so angry with this? Now, we always have to go back to Exodus 20. Exodus 20 is about the 10 commandments. Right up front, God says, I am a jealous God, that you shall have no other gods before my face, that you should not go after other gods and treat them as gods, that you should not have anything made with hands that look like animals under the heavens, the skies, or on earth. You shouldn't worship any of this because they're all made by God. And when you do that, it is about committing adultery. And God is very angry about adultery. So the picture is, between humans, committing adultery is to reflect on Israel committing adultery against God. That is why God is so angry. And so this is a very vivid picture lesson that is painted in the life of Hosea, and loving this woman who is committing adultery with a neighbor. And that is what God is trying to say. I am like you. Try to feel how I feel. I am loving this woman called children of Israel, and they turn away after other lovers, after other men. And hence that is the picture that's given to us in the first verse. Now, with that said, God is angry. And so what did Hosea do? Hosea went out and paid for her. Now, understand this, the word love is to give. And so the word love is to give, and this is to give to the gods. So love a woman is to give to this woman. So he bought her for 15 shekels. Now, you may think that what is happening here, it means that this woman is committing adultery and is also in the profession of harlotry. So is this doing it one more time? I think it may not be physically doing it. I'm not sure. I think God is referring back to Gomer, the wife that Hosea married in chapter 1, to reflect upon that relationship. And that's what I think is happening. I think that's what's happening. But I can't be sure, because the key word is once more. And so it could be one more time marrying a harlot, or one more time reflecting on what happened with Gomer at the start. So I bought her for myself for 15 shekels of silver. And the word silver is very interesting. We always think silver is the piece of a precious metal. The word for silver means something that people long for, that they have value. So 15 shekels of something that people find value. And that is a lot of money. And then he also said, I gave 1.5 homer of barley. You remember when we were studying Ruth, on the first day when she picked a whole heap, a homer of barley. And so this one is 1.5. It's a lot of money. And so he says, I said to her, you shall stay with me many days. Well, understand this is to marry her, and it's to be with Hosea. You shall not play the harlot anymore. Meaning, you shall not go after other men, to be with other men, nor shall you have a man. So you notice in the Hebrew, whenever you have this no or and, you have one part here and one part here, and both actually say the same thing. Don't play the harlot, don't have another man. It's saying the same thing in two slightly different ways, but giving the same principle, that I am your only man, right? And so, I will be toward you. That Hosea says, I will do the same with you, that you are the only woman, and I will be your only man. Do this for me. And this is important because we have this concept, bought her. You would find that this would be an idea of trade, a purchase. or a trade. God is going to pay something for this wife, for the return. And in this case, you can see that Hosea is paying a good deal of money and reflects on what God is going to do in the future. And so here we go. Verse 4 and 5 goes hand in hand. So we have to look at it together. After we understand verse 1 and then 2 and 3, and 2 and 3 is about buying the harlot, setting her free, taking her for yourself. And so the word love comes into play. Love means to give. Purchase is to give, to pay with money, something that is valuable. And verse 3 is the condition that there should be only one man and one woman in this case. All right. Now, for the children of Israel shall live, shall continue. Maybe you should use continue or dwell many days. And so we look at many days means quite a while, with no king and no prince. And these are two words that has a connotation, right? King would be the leader of the nation. And basically, it means that there will be no one like David and no prince. And prince here is somebody who is a warrior. So now we have a king and a prince. Now, if you look at how it is expressed, it could be one and the same, which means a leader of two qualities, of a ruler and of a warrior. Or it could be two separate individuals. So God is saying, for the northern kingdom, they will continue with life for a while without any king or any prince, without sacrifice or pillar. Now understand this. Sacrifice is part of the Torah. Pillar appears to be idolatry. And then without ephod or teraphim, same thing. Ephod is to be worn by the high priest into the sanctuary. And this would also refer to a very Torah-driven instruction. Teraphim is also a very idolatry instruction. If you remember at one point in time when Laban was chasing down Jacob together with the two daughters, Leah and Rachel, because Rachel stole all the idols of Laban. And that word is teraphim, the idols, right? The idols they pray to for healing and for things like that. And so what does this mean in verse 4? Well, in a very simple term, the children of Israel will have many days that they will continue in this world. There will be no king, no warriors. They won't be fighting for anything. They won't be offering sacrifice to God, or they won't be praying to an idol. They won't be wearing the ephod. There won't be a high priest, which also means there won't be a temple, because there can't be a temple when there's no sacrifice. No temple, no sacrifice. No temple, no need for a high priest. And there's no teraphim, also related to idolatry. And fundamentally, what this means is this, that there will be a period of time the children of Israel will no longer be in the land. That there is no chance for them to worship God or the idols. Either way, it's gone. And this will continue for a while. We don't know how long, but a while. Verse 5. After all this has happened, the children of Israel shall return. Return where? Return back into the land. So this piece here says that they will be out of the land. This piece here says that they will be back in the land. And so that's a prophecy. Now we read in 2 Kings, and you will notice that the Assyrian Empire came and took the northern kingdom away. So we know, as in our previous 2 chapters, that Hosea is at the tail end of the northern kingdom's existence, warning them over and over again. But after they have gone out, they've been removed from the land, so they can't even worship Jehovah, they can't even pray to idols. They have to be kicked out of the land, no more physical place for them. Afterward is important. After all these things, after they've been kicked out, after the period have been without king or warrior, they will then return. That's the important word, return. Return, instead of turn away, this will be turn back. They will turn back and come back to this land. And what will they do? They will seek Jehovah, their God, and David, their king. So in this case, we find that there are two. This "and" is not the one and only. This one means that there will be a king. And of course, their God. And the king is not God, right? And God is not king. So there will be someone on earth that will be their king. And not only that they will seek God. Now the word seek, how shall I describe the word seek? It is to search for God. Seek the Lord that he may be found. They will come back to the land and look for God. They will pray to God. They will worship God. They will know Jehovah, their God. As of now, we are in verse 4, and verse 4 has been fulfilled. We are still in the state of verse 4, that the northern kingdom is out there somewhere, and they are not seeking God, and they have not come back to the land, and there is no king. The next section is important. They shall fear, right? They shall fear the Lord. What does it mean to fear the Lord? This is not fear of the Lord, this is fear the Lord. So that fear is actually a verb. The word fear here is to tremble. To tremble, to have terror, to be afraid of God. Why? Because he has kicked you out and he has ignored you and said, you're not my people, I'm not your God. But one day you will all come back and you will fear me. So remember, in the book of Proverbs, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So they will come back and know God, worship God, seek God, fear God, and his goodness. What is goodness? Well, back in the land, you can see God's goodness when there is rain at the right time, where there's enough sunshine and there's water and the crops grow and everything is so nice and beautiful in the land. When will this take place? In the latter days. So let me explain to you what it means by in the latter days. This means end days. At the end of the history that God has put forward, this would be in the future, but in the last part of that story, of that history that God is painting. Now, we don't know as we move along when that time will be, but we are moving towards that time. Because the end days will be when, number one, in Ezekiel 37, they will both come back into the land. Now, today, we have the southern kingdom, Jews. that's gone back to the land. But this verse 5 is not about the Jews. It's about the other tribes. And so when we see the other tribes coming back to Israel, we will know that the end is near. So this is what it means. In the end days, they will fear the Lord. They will come and search for God. They will come back to the land. And these are all characteristic of the end days, as according to the book of Hosea. And so that will be the picture. Verse 4 has been fulfilled. It wasn't at the time of Hosea. Later on, when the Assyrians came and conquered the northern kingdom, there it was fulfilled. To the letter, that they can't sacrifice, they don't come back. They can't pray to idols, they're not in the land. All their high places now are all barren. They're all archaeological sites. Nobody has touched them ever since. They don't wear the ephod. There's no high priest, no sacrifice idea. There are no more statues for them to pray to. So when they were taken away, they had emptiness. But God says in verse 5, this is the prophecy that will be fulfilled one day. They will come back to the land. It is not just return to God. They're going to return to the land where they were removed. You see, the word return or repent requires a coming back. It's a physical entity. It's a physical act. Seeking the Lord is also a physical act. Fearing God is something visible. And end days would be where the period to take place. And so we look forward to see some of these signs along the way. And with this, we complete chapter 3. Any questions?
Pastor, why is it that in all the prophecy, the southern kingdom is always not mentioned and not play as importance to the eyes of God?
Oh, no, not at all. In fact, if you look at Ezekiel, if you look at 2 Kings is a good chapter, good book to read, how God treated the northern and southern kingdom. Now, the northern kingdom has to be kicked away because they serve other gods. They committed adultery. And then in Jeremiah, God says, I will divorce you. I will give you a certificate of divorce. But God also said in Jeremiah 3 that, hey, Judah also did the same. But they pretend they are not doing it. They are hiding. God says, I know they're doing exactly the same. But God retained the southern kingdom because of the promise to David, that God will deal with his children like a father to a son. He will use the nations, the people, to discipline them and chastise them. But as a father to a son, the son will always come home. And so the Babylonians are the ones that are used by God to discipline the southern kingdom. But after 70 years, they return and they rebuilt the city and they rebuilt the temple. And they are there at the time of Jesus. And then in AD 70, the temple was destroyed. In AD 135, they were completely evicted out of Judea. And thereby they too are no longer in the land. But we also know that in the end times, they will come back. And so in 1946, 14th May, they were restored as a modern day nation. But the only people who came back are the Jews. And by Jews, we mean Judah, Benjamin, and many of the Levites as well. So the issue we are looking at today is that what happened to the northern states, the northern tribes, the Manasseh, the Ephraim, the Asher, the Gad, the Dan, and so on. And they will come back. And that's what verse 5 is saying. These children of Israel will return. So it is not to say that God doesn't deal with the southern kingdom. He did. And we will read that in the book of Daniel, in the book of Nehemiah, in the book of Ezra. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, Pastor.
Okay,
Bye.
thank you.